On a stormy night in Detroit, a young woman arrives at a rental house already occupied by a stranger. What begins as a booking mistake leads beneath the basement, where every escape reveals something worse. This is Barbarian. On a rain-soaked night in Detroit, Tess Marshall reaches her rental house before an important job interview and discovers the lockbox is completely empty. She repeatedly calls the property manager, but nobody answers, leaving her stranded on the porch while the storm pounds the deserted street outside. Tess retreats toward her car, then notices movement inside the supposedly vacant house and returns cautiously to confront whoever is already staying there. A stranger named Keith opens the door and claims he rented the same property through another service, creating a suspicious standoff between them. They compare confirmations on their phones, and both bookings prove legitimate for the same address, dates, host, and nighttime arrival without any discrepancy. With nowhere dry to wait, Tess enters reluctantly, checks the rooms, and asks Keith to prove he belongs there before trusting him tonight. Keith retrieves his phone and shows every detail, while Tess maintains her distance and watches his behavior carefully for any sign of deception. The pair confirm that both services list the same management number, proving the dangerous confusion came from the rental company itself without explanation. Tess prepares to leave, but Keith warns that searching alone in this abandoned neighborhood after dark would be dangerously reckless for her tonight. Every nearby hotel is booked because of a medical convention, so Tess reluctantly accepts that the house may be her safest option tonight. Keith offers Tess the bedroom and insists on taking the couch, using deliberate courtesy to make the strange arrangement feel less threatening tonight. He changes the bedding while Tess photographs his identification, quietly creating evidence in case the apparently considerate stranger becomes dangerous later if necessary. Keith showers and gives her privacy, while Tess examines his license and confirms that the name he provided appears genuine enough for now. Later, Keith opens a sealed wine bottle only while Tess watches, proving he understands why she refuses unattended food or drinks from strangers. Their guarded small talk becomes easier, and the awkward strangers begin sharing personal details across the kitchen table as the late hour passes. Tess explains that she is interviewing for a documentary research job with filmmaker Catherine James, hoping to build an independent new life in Detroit. Keith recognizes Catherine's work and reveals that he helped establish a local artists' collective, giving the pair an unexpected professional connection that night. The conversation turns personal when Tess describes repeatedly returning to a controlling partner, even though she knows the relationship keeps hurting her emotionally. Keith says people must reject dynamics created for someone else's benefit, but Tess argues that women face consequences men rarely consider every day. As they make the bed together, their suspicion softens into attraction, though neither acts on the connection steadily forming between them that evening. They finally say goodnight, believing the double booking has produced an unusual but harmless encounter between two decent strangers before finally separating for sleep. Hours later, Tess wakes and finds her bedroom door standing open, even though she distinctly remembers shutting it before she fell asleep earlier. In the living room, Keith twists on the couch and cries for help during a nightmare, but awakens confused by Tess's questions and alarm. Keith denies opening her door, and Tess returns to bed, knowing that something else may have moved through the locked house that night. By morning, Keith has left a friendly note wishing her luck, while Tess departs for the interview with the night's mystery still unresolved. Tess drives downtown, and the contrast reveals that the tidy rental sits inside a neighborhood filled with burned homes and abandoned buildings everywhere. Catherine likes Tess during the interview, but becomes alarmed by the Brightmoor address and firmly advises her to find safer accommodations somewhere else. Tess leaves encouraged about the job yet unsettled by the warning, then drives back toward the isolated house on the ruined block alone. A frantic homeless man chases her vehicle and screams for her to leave the house, making his urgent warning resemble a violent attack. Tess locks herself inside and calls police, but dispatch says no officers are available, leaving her alone while the man remains nearby outside. While waiting for Keith, she enters the basement and becomes trapped when the heavy door closes and refuses to open from her side. Searching for another exit, Tess pulls a hanging cord that activates a concealed door built directly into the basement wall beside the stairs. Beyond it lies a narrow concrete passage, proving the small rental contains a hidden structure extending far beneath the surrounding property and street. The corridor ends at a bare room holding a stained mattress, a bucket, and a camera positioned toward the bed in total silence. Tess races back in horror, but the locked basement exit forces her to wait until Keith arrives outside and finally hears her shouting. Keith opens a window and pulls Tess free, then listens as she describes the room and demands that they leave the house immediately. Because he has not seen the evidence, Keith doubts her conclusion and treats the hidden chamber as disturbing but possibly explainable without proof. He apologizes for dismissing her fear, then asks Tess to wait upstairs while he quickly inspects the hidden passage alone before they leave. Tess waits alone beside the basement, but Keith does not return, and his silence gradually becomes more frightening than the room below itself. When she hears him calling faintly, Tess chooses not to abandon him and descends into the basement for a third time despite everything. She passes the hidden room and enters a second opening, where rough earthen tunnels continue far beyond the house's visible foundation into darkness. Following Keith's weakening voice, Tess advances with a flashlight through passages supported by old boards and surrounded by suffocating darkness on every side. The tunnel narrows and twists, forcing her deeper underground, while the route back becomes increasingly difficult to recognize with every cautious step forward. Tess reaches a cage-like barrier and keeps searching, convinced Keith is injured somewhere beyond the light of her flashlight inside the tunnel. She finally finds Keith bleeding and terrified, but he insists someone bit him and tries pulling her farther away from the exit. A deformed woman suddenly lunges forward and crushes Keith's skull against the wall, leaving Tess trapped alone beneath the house without warning. The story cuts to actor A.J. Gilbride, cheerfully driving along California's coast while celebrating a television pilot that could advance his career in daylight. His representatives call with devastating news. Actress Megan Maddox has accused A.J. of sexually assaulting her while they filmed the pilot without warning. A.J. explodes in anger and denies everything, focusing immediately on his lost role rather than asking what Megan says actually happened between them. The network suspends him and may continue without him, turning his promising new series into a complete, rapidly expanding professional disaster almost overnight. AJ's attorney explains that the investigation and civil case could consume his savings, forcing him to liquidate valuable property before proceedings even begin. The lawyer identifies several Detroit rentals as assets he can sell, including the Brightmoor house, where Tess and Keith have vanished without explanation. AJ flies to Detroit still viewing himself as the victim, treating the accusation as financial sabotage instead of examining his conduct at all. He collects the rental keys and drives toward Brightmoor, while management claims no current guests are registered inside the property that afternoon anymore. Arriving at the house, AJ finds the neighborhood ruined, but assumes the neglected building remains another ordinary investment he fully controls for profit. Inside, he notices luggage, toiletries, and personal items belonging to missing guests, yet receives no explanation despite repeatedly calling the property manager directly. AJ searches the rooms and discovers Tess's laptop, confirming that someone recently occupied the house and left every important possession behind without explanation. That evening, AJ drinks with an old friend and claims Megan destroyed his career by misrepresenting what he insists was a consensual encounter. Pressed for honesty, he admits she initially refused him, then boasts that persistence eventually made her stop resisting his advances after repeated pressure. Still unwilling to accept responsibility, AJ leaves Megan a calculated voicemail apologizing only if she interpreted the encounter differently instead of admitting assault. Back at the rental, he hears a noise below and notices the basement door open, suggesting the missing guests may still be trapped inside. AJ searches their luggage and the lower rooms, becoming more irritated by the intrusion than concerned about what happened to the missing renters. He takes a gun and announces himself before descending, expecting to frighten an ordinary trespasser who cannot offer serious resistance inside his basement. The basement appears empty until AJ finds the concealed doorway and follows it into the same disturbing room Tess discovered behind the wall. Rather than recognizing evidence of captivity, AJ studies the hidden chamber and wonders whether its area could increase the house's eventual sale price. He continues through the passage, measuring walls and corridors while imagining profit from square footage never listed in the official property records anywhere. An online search confirms underground space may add value separately, encouraging AJ to keep exploring even though every visible detail warns him away. Tape measure in hand, he advances into raw tunnels containing cages, doors, and signs that people have lived underground there for many years. The passage grows darker and more primitive, but AJ keeps calculating dimensions instead of turning back through the nearly impossible darkness around him. He reaches a filthy chamber where an old television plays a breastfeeding lesson, and his greedy excitement immediately turns into genuine terror. AJ raises his flashlight toward movement, but the deformed woman attacks from the darkness and drags him away before he can fire even once. Decades earlier, Brightmoor appears prosperous and orderly as a middle-aged man named Frank leaves the same house on a planned errand that morning. At a supermarket, Frank follows a woman while purchasing diapers, wipes, gloves, and supplies under the false pretense of preparing for a home birth. He watches the woman carefully across the aisle, learning her appearance and routine without drawing attention from nearby shoppers throughout the bright store. Frank follows her car through the neighborhood, records where she lives, and waits until he can approach the property safely without being noticed. He retrieves a utility uniform from his trunk, using the disguise to appear official and enter the woman's home without resistance that afternoon. Once inside, Frank secretly unlocks a window for later access, revealing the method behind his planned abductions after each selected victim leaves home. A neighbor says his family is moving because the district is collapsing, but Frank calmly insists he will remain in the house alone. Back in the present, AJ awakens inside a deep pit beside Tess, who warns him that panic will anger the woman holding them. The woman descends with a baby bottle, and Tess drinks obediently because she understands that compliance can keep them alive for the moment. AJ refuses the bottle and challenges the creature, causing her to react violently while Tess urges him to immediately imitate a helpless child instead. The creature drags AJ into another chamber and forces him against her body while an instructional nursing video plays against his will nearby. Using the distraction, Tess climbs from the pit, crawls through the tunnels, and reaches the basement while AJ screams somewhere behind her desperately. She squeezes through the small ground-level window where Andre grabs her and pulls her outside before the creature can follow them into daylight. Andre explains that the woman hunts at night and is not the worst thing underground, then urges Tess to escape immediately with him. Tess refuses to abandon AJ but leaves the block seeking a telephone, police assistance, and anyone willing to enter the house before nightfall. Meanwhile, AJ escapes the nursing chamber and explores a deeper branch of the tunnel, hoping it leads toward another exit through the darkness. The passage ends at a hidden room where AJ finds Frank elderly, bedridden, and surrounded by equipment and countless videotapes beneath the house. At a nearby gas station, Tess finally reaches police and reports the murder, underground prison, and second captive still inside the rental house. 2 officers meet her outside, but her filthy clothes, missing identification, and frantic account make them dismiss her as unstable instead of listening. AJ gives Frank water and asks for help, then notices shelves of videotapes documenting women, pregnancies, and years of systematic abuse around him. Tess leads the officers to the rental and begs them to enter, but they accuse her of trespassing after she breaks the front window. Frank sees one recording playing, reaches for a revolver, and kills himself rather than answer for the crimes preserved around him in the room. AJ takes the gun and begins returning through the tunnel, now understanding that the creature is a product of Frank's repeated incest and captivity. Tess steals a vehicle and drives through the house, striking the pursuing woman and pinning her against the damaged structure at full speed. Believing the creature dead, Tess re-enters the basement to rescue AJ as he climbs upward through the darkness carrying Frank's revolver and flashlight. AJ mistakes Tess for the attacker and shoots her in the darkness, then drags the wounded woman outside in panic before recognizing her. With Tess's vehicle wrecked, AJ carries her toward Andre's shelter beside the water tower, hoping to reach safety before she bleeds to death. Andre explains that Frank abducted women for decades and fathered children with his descendants, eventually producing the deformed woman below through forced inbreeding. AJ admits shooting Tess and wonders whether one terrible act makes him evil, then promises to repair the damage despite remaining focused on himself. The woman crashes through the shelter wall, tears Andre's arm away, and beats him to death before Tess and AJ can escape together. They climb the water tower, but the creature follows relentlessly, trapping both survivors on the platform high above the fenced ground far below. AJ throws Tess over the edge, hoping the creature will follow her downward and give him enough time to escape from the platform alone. The woman shields Tess during the fall and kills AJ, but Tess takes the revolver, shoots her, and walks alone